All right, greetings everyone. This video is one in a series on the topic of assessment best practices in Canvas quizzes. Now, these videos are intended to explore ways that you can structure assessments in Canvas in order to discourage academic dishonesty. Now, this video is going to demonstrate how to include variance in the types of questions that you're including in your Canvas quizzes. And this topic is actually going to be addressed in two parts. This is part one, which will show you what these questions look like from a student perspective. Part two is going to look at them from the teacher side. So I have pulled up a sample quiz that I recently created in order to illustrate some of the options that you have available to you. So let me just go ahead and jump in here and take this quiz in order to see what these look like from from a student's perspective. So for these first two, we have a traditional multiple choice and true-false question that most of us are probably familiar with, so I'm not going to say a whole lot about those. Fill in the blank question types require students to type in their response to answer the question. Now you also have the option to include multiple fill-in-the-blank spaces in a single question. So let's just go ahead and type in a response here. The multiple drop-down question here is sort of like putting more than one multiple choice assessment into the same quiz question. So let's go ahead and select an answer here. Question 6 here is a question type where students must select multiple correct answers, and they're not necessarily told how many correct answers there are. So let me just go ahead and select some answers here. Matching questions are also an option in Canvas quizzes, although the formatting is obviously a bit different from what it might look like in a traditional pencil and paper quiz. So let me just take a look here. I'm going to choose some answers here. Let's see, picking in my matching options, and there we go. Now, a numerical question only allows students to enter numbers in their response. So if I try to type in letters, it gives me this response. I'm going to put a number value here. Now for question 9 and 10, similar to a numerical question, these two formula questions only allow students to enter numbers in their responses. So it's similar in that way. However, what you're going to see when we look at this from the teacher side is that we can give Canvas instructions to generate a wide range of values within the formula so that individual students' questions are not going to be the same as their classmates. So I'm just going to put an answer in here. We'll take a look at this once we submit the results. Let's see. In the essay or long answer question, students just have a text box to craft their response. Now, obviously, one downside for this question is that it would have to be manually graded by the instructor. But it does promote the integration of some higher order skills than you're typically able to accomplish with some of the simpler question styles. So you're just going to type in a little response here. And finally, this last question type allows you to prompt students to upload a file along with their quiz. So if there's an instance where you want students to include some file along with their quiz submission, this gives you the ability to do that. So for example, I might have provided students with a study guide for the test that I'd ask them to complete and that I want them to submit to me, but rather than having a separate Canvas assignment, I can have them include it here directly in the quiz. So let's go ahead and submit our quiz here in order to see a few things about these question characteristics. Excuse me. Questions 1 and 2 probably need no explanation since these are likely, again, the types that we're familiar with. For the fill-in-the-blank questions, it's important to note here that spelling matters, right? You can see here the various options that the instructor considered to be an acceptable response, and coherency principle was not one of those variations that was considered acceptable. I'll note here capitalization does not affect the correctness of the response. Same rule applies for multiple fill-in-the-blank questions. And you can see here for questions 4 and 5 how Canvas quizzes allocates points for multi-part questions where students answer only part of it correctly. So for each of these questions, it was worth a total of 2 points. They got half of them correct, so they got half points for each of these 2 questions. For a multi-answer select question, in this instance, there are 4 correct options. So it distributes, if it's worth 2 points in this instance, it distributes half a point for each correct answer and deducts for each one that the student missed, or in the instance where there was an incorrect option that a student chose. Let's see, similarly for matching questions, Canvas quizzes will divide up the points based on how much you assign for the overall score, and then what percentage the students actually got correct. So here we had 2 points divided up amongst 5 parts for the matching question. And then for each of these numeric and formula questions in 8 and 10, we'll talk more about these when we look at it from the teacher side, but you can just see how they're answered, whether it's correct or incorrect. Like I said, we'll talk about that more in the next video. And finally, for questions 11 and 12, you can see that for both long answer and file upload, the student will get a note saying that the response will be graded shortly once the instructor has had an opportunity to review it. So, all right, that's it for now. Hopefully you'll come back and join us for the next video where we will look at this quiz from the instructor side in order to see how to add and manipulate these quizzes that use multiple variants in the question types.